ESPN calls out Billy Donovan for basically having a mid-500 record since the acquisition of DeMar DeRozan. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to talk about the updates to Josh Giddey and Coby White's contract situations. And finally, while the Bulls have asked for patience till the summer of 2026, actually have started looking at the targets that the Bulls could have in the summer of 2026, and they're all restricted free agents. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all, and we're going to start off talking with this. So ESPN came out with an article about numbers for each team, numbers to watch out for each team. And the number that they gave was 164 for the Chicago Bulls, mainly because since the Bulls acquired DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso in that summer, Alex Caruso, pay no mind, I'm old, 164 and 164, basically the definition they've been a mid-team, 500 since that time. Now, I think things are going a different trajectory. Again, I'm not one of the people who think that this Bulls team is going to take a step back this year, but, that it to each their own, right? Now, that's not Billy Donovan's overall record since being the coach of the Chicago Bulls. That's just since the summer that we acquired DeMar DeRozan, basically since the second year that Billy Donovan took over this team. Since the first year of this team, and taking everything into consideration, the Bulls are 194 and 205. And that is, 195 and 205. He has a 48 win percentage as his whole time here being the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. And that is the definition of mid. And I think that's what, when you go into and you hear the things questions about why the Bulls have such a strong loyalty to Billy Donovan specifically, and that's why people question that, is because the results have been a mixed bag here with Billy Donovan. Hasn't been all bad, as some people have it out to be, like the people who oh, Billy Donovan is the worst coach in the NBA. He's not. He's never been that. I doubt he ever will be that. He's too good to be that bad, but he's not good enough to really elevate a roster, right? And that's the thing when it comes down to it. I've said multiple times, I do think Billy Donovan is a really good coach for when you get star-level players, because he's going to put those stars in the best situation. Now, to some degree, because of where the Bulls roster is, it has forced Billy Donovan to kind of be more creative in how he creates his offense, and I can't wait to see how the balance goes going into next season with a player that's growing like Modest Buzelis. You have your player that's expected to be your number one scorer, at least in Coby White. You have the organizer of your offense that can also score himself in Josh Giddey, and Vooch is still here, right? And that's not even counting the other players, and of course, Kevin Huerter who can score. We've seen Ayu Dosunmu be able to score, in the framework as a starter of 16 to 17 points. So it's going to be interesting because the Bulls don't have that one go-to guy, or the other, you knew before. It was going to be DeMar, it was going to be Zach, it was going to be Vooch. And any scoring outside of that was really you had to make the most of your opportunities, right? And so this team is a little bit more open than that. Of course, you still got Coby and you got the guys that you expect, but it's more open than that. And the balance is going to have to be struck by some of the other players stepping up. But the Bulls and the love that they have for Billy Donovan, the loyalty that they have to Billy Donovan, in some ways is admirable, because in a league where you see so many coaches fired 1 year after taking the job, 2 years after taking the job, when they knew it was going to be a rebuild, the Bulls have stuck with their head coach and they have not moved off of it. But the results, right? If Billy Donovan was more a coach that had a 600 record, right? We're saying above 500, and that type of loyalty was there, I think most people would understand it. For example, look at the record that Taylor Jenkins had with the Memphis Grizzlies. He had one of the best records over that time period that you'll find, but the loyalty wasn't there, right? So it just raises some of those questions, and also raises how committed the Bulls are. Now, again, I like to fight against my own arguments and talk about things from both sides. The credit to Billy Donovan is he did adapt the offensive system. People who want to act like Billy, you can't blame the coach when things on the court go wrong and then take away the credit when things are actually changing on the court. And the Bulls did change their play style. They adapted a play style. They spread the ball out way more to get everybody involved after the Zach LaVine trade. And it was tangible how different the offense looked under this Bulls team last year versus how they've looked the 3 or 4 years prior. It was tangible. It was there. And I'd say this, even the fact that we were playing a more quick pace, and Vooch has never been a player that really fits the most seamless in a up-tempo system. And if you look at the season and the consistency that Nikola Vucevic had and how Vooch was basically our best and most consistent player throughout the entirety of the year in a system that didn't fit him, that you have to look at coaching somewhat in that, right? And again, that's not to say that everything has been perfect. It has not. It's not to say that, some of the things and how we use some players still is a little bit questionable at times. It is. But when people try to act like Billy Donovan is just horrible, it's not that either. He's a solid NBA coach. And that's what the Bulls are attaching themselves to, is a solid, adequate NBA coach. And that's where some of the frustration lies by a lot of Bulls fans. And I guess we got to see where that's going to go eventually when it's all said and done. But that's what the Bulls are attaching themselves to right now. That's where they are right now. And I guess we'll see what comes of that coming up in the future. So, but you guys can let me know how you feel on all of that down below. Like, it's just, when these outlets try to talk about the Bulls, the fact that the Bulls have been just right in the middle for so long is the prevailing thought more times than not. And that just goes towards, like, it's so rare to see a team just stay in the middle this long. Usually a team has taken a step up by now, or they've been in the middle so bad that they've taken a step back. And the Bulls have just been right there solidly mid. And while some people are saying that this Bulls team is going to struggle to win over 32-ish games, I do think that this is a year where the Bulls getting to 500 is a legitimate possibility. We just got to see how it's going to work out and how these pieces are going to come together. But two of those pieces that are very important to whatever the Bulls do this offseason are Coby White and Josh Giddey. And we got updates on what the future may hold for those guys. A little update on Josh Giddey and a prediction down below. But the Dallas Hoops Journal shared a quote from an NBA executive that happened last week, and it said this: "I know multiple teams tried to trade for Coby this summer. There was some chatter that he was almost traded on draft night. The Bulls love him, though. He's not going anywhere. They have shot down trade inquiries for him." This is not the first time that we've heard this. Jake Fisher shared something similar. Brett Siegel has shared something similar. And, I think even Keith Smith of Spotrac said something similar as well. So it's been a kind of a unifying thing that the teams have called on Coby White. And, that goes to some frustration from some Bulls fans that they have the view of the Bulls should be trading all these players. Let's not sign any of them to contracts. Let's stack assets, whatever it is. And the Bulls are turning that down. Now, I've said it before. Again, it could be a ploy, right? Meaning that you turn down the trade offers now, you wait for Coby to look really good at the start of the season, and then those teams call back and maybe you get more, right? If they are really considering trading Coby, that could be the thought process. But if we're just taking it at face value, this Bulls team has valued Coby White. That value in Coby White has never really wavered when you really think about it, right? I always go back to this. One of my first big videos to blow up after creating this channel was the Bulls would be crazy to trade Coby White. And that was in the summer of 2021, I believe that it could be 22, but I think it was 2021. And that was at a time where so many Bulls fans were so convinced that the Bulls had to trade Coby White. He didn't fit on this team. They needed to trade him to get their big, whatever it was. And they kept Coby White. And even though his role was definitely different then, coming off the bench, trying to be a jump shooter, it didn't really work out the best for him in that case. But they stuck around. Coby's always been a part of the rotation unless he's been hurt. And they've shown a level of commitment to Coby White over this time. And I don't personally get the inclination that this team is going to want to move off of that when it seems like Coby White is about to finally pop. And he has the opportunity, the situation makes sense, and the need is all there now for Coby White to have a big season in 2025-26. Now, that's going to ultimately culminate in a big deal for Coby at the end of the season, that the Bulls are in a place right now to be able to pay him because of how clean their cap sheet is. So I think that us continually hearing that the Bulls are high on Coby, that they value Coby, that they're turning down trade calls for Coby White, for people that are hoping or thinking that Coby's going to be moved because of the value that he has around the league or all that type of things, it seems like the Bulls are ready to hold on to that. And I personally think that's the right thing to do. I don't think you should be looking to move on from Coby right now. I know people are like, well, modest is the future or whatever else it is. To me, you keep talent around, even if you're expecting a young player to eventually be able to take the lead. He still has a lot that he has to show before that. And this could be the season where Coby finally crosses that 20-point per game mark into getting into more like 23, 25 points per game. And I've said it before a couple episodes ago. If Coby White gets to 24, 25 points per game, there were like 8 players in the league that averaged over 25 points per game last year. And Coby has an opportunity to be one of those guys because of the need here. And we'll see how that works out for Coby. But hearing that the Bulls continue to turn down trade offers for Coby White shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that's looking at this thing objectively, because that has been something that is maintained pretty true throughout this time. We've heard it a little bit about Io too. So we'll see if both these guys come. But hearing that an NBA exec says that you can kind of bet on Coby White. It's expected that Coby White's going to stay around for a long time. We shall see how that's going to keep going. The Queen, he's not going anywhere. I think that says a lot. And I think Coby, in the way that he handles himself, kind of says that as well, too. I know I always say that going into unrestricted free agency can always be a crapshoot because it just takes one team with one offer that blows everything out the water. But I wouldn't be surprised if Coby signs during that exclusive negotiating period in the offseason and he never really hits the true open market, but we shall see. We also got an update on Josh Giddey. This one comes from Bleacher Report that predicted that Josh Giddey signs a 4-year deal for $96 million, with the last year being a player option. Now, I think we've talked about a version of this deal before. This will put the annual average value of that contract around $24 million. Of course, it's going to have the raises, so it's going to start less than that. It's going to end a little bit higher than that. But I think that would be fair value for Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey signing 4-year, $96 million, which a player option in the last year of the deal, which means that it's basically a 3-year deal. He can opt out at the end of that, re-sign for more money because he would have more proven for this Bulls team and more proven. I think that's a fair deal. It's kind of between the two, not exactly in the middle. But if Josh Giddey's seeking an average annual value of $30 million, the Bulls were sticking to their $20 million. If it ends up somewhere around that where both sides agree to that, I think that's a fair shake for both sides. It just if that is actually the way that it ends up working out, we shall see. But I think that would be a pretty fair deal for both sides. And we're going to see how that ends up shaking out. So let me know what you guys think on that down below. Now, I want to move on from Tyler. I'm actually going to carry this topic over, even though I don't like doing this all the time. I'm going to carry this topic over from what conversation me and Pat were having on Locked On Bulls, right? I talked about over on Locked On is that what should the Bulls have a backup plan for the summer of 2026? Meaning that, I think that there's a chance Coby could leave, chance Io could leave. Of course, Vooch is an unrestricted free agent as well. We don't exactly know how the draft's going to shake out. I've already started looking. I'm going to be ahead of the draft this year. I'm not going to wait till like midseason to really start kind of figuring out the best candidates for the Bulls, because I already got a player that I don't know. I haven't looked at really any mocks yet, but I got a player to look out for the Chicago Bulls. Chris Siniak, I believe is how you pronounce it. The power forward / center from Houston. Look out for him. 6'10", 230 pounds. He's 19 years old. Keep an eye on that guy throughout this collegiate season. But coming off of that, the Bulls do need to have a backup plan in the summer of 2026. And so while AK's talked about patience in the summer of 26, you got to have targets. And a lot of the more unrestricted free agents have kind of, already re-signed new deals. And I think the key to the free agency, and I think for a lot of teams, not just the Bulls, are going to be restricted free agents. Follow the logic here. Much like with this offseason, right, where you have players, and I don't think the market is going to be as bad, like the way that it's been for Jonathan Kuminga, Cam Thomas, and Josh Giddey. I don't think it's going to be that tough for that, because there's going to be so many more teams with cap space that are going to be there. But I do think this, right? I think there are a number of restricted free agents that the teams that they're on are going to have to think about potentially going into the luxury tax to re-sign those players. And for that, I have a list of teams here, right? First one, Mark Williams. Mark Williams is a restricted free agent in the summer of 2026. I think that he could be a good target for the Chicago Bulls. Last season, averaging 15 points, 10 rebounds, 60% shooting from the field. He knows exactly what he is over a block per game as well. Now, the problem with Mark Williams is he doesn't play a lot of minutes. I mean, a lot of games. He's never played over 45 games in his 3 years in the NBA. He's had health concerns. So I have a caveat for Mark Williams. The only way that I would want to see the Chicago Bulls sign Mark Williams as a restricted free agent is if they also draft a center, meaning that they're bringing in Mark Williams to be the guy at 7 foot, 240 pounds. They're bringing him in as a more seasoned option at the center position that matches the play style that you want to play. But then you're kind of grooming that center that you draft to be the center actually of the future. And maybe Mark Williams eventually takes the backup role over the last half of that new contract. I wouldn't sign Mark Williams probably for more than 3 years. Maybe an option in the 4th year at best is where I would. Still 23 years old, so there's still a lot of time to turn it around. But when you look at big men that have this many injury concerns at the start of their career, that typically maintains throughout it. Now, we know that he got traded to Phoenix, but they also drafted Kaman Malawak, who is raw. They also got Rasheer Fleming there as well. So they already have some bigs in the wings. And I think that he could be gotten from the Phoenix Suns in restricted free agency. Mark Williams, again, with the caveat that we also draft a center in next year's draft, is really why I'm looking at Mark Williams. And then I'm looking at kind of fit. Now, some of these guys are backup plans if we do lose Coby White. One of the first guys that if the Bulls lose Coby White, that I'd be extremely interested in the Bulls signing is Jaden Ivey. And I think that Jaden Ivey is going to be in a very similar situation to like a Cam Thomas and a Josh Giddey heading into restricted free agency. The reason why I think that, A, he's coming back from a broken fibula. B, he doesn't really fit what the Detroit Pistons try to do offensively. He really is kind of a guy that scores outside of the way that they like to play. Now, there are some teams that need that. They need that player that can go out and get a bucket. That's not necessarily that does have a different play style. You stagger that guy sometimes. And so there's a huge possibility that the Pistons stick with that. But the Pistons are also a team like the Chicago Bulls. They don't go into the luxury tax often. They do it a lot more than the Bulls, but they are a team that tries to avoid that luxury tax. And so because of that, a team offering Jaden Ivey a big contract that could send the Pistons into the luxury tax are definitely it's a concern, because then the Pistons may have to look at that and say, I don't know if we're going to go that route. But I think Jaden Ivey is a big player in restricted free agency next year that could make a lot of sense for the Chicago Bulls. Another one, and this is, again, if Coby White does leave in free agency, again, I don't think that he will, but this is more of a contingency plan and a player that has chemistry with Josh Giddey. Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels is a restricted free agent now. I do think the Atlanta Hawks are going to be apt at keeping him. He is not nearly the scorer that Coby White is at all. Not even that. He's a decent shooter. Last year, 34% from the field. But what he does defensively and how you can use that next to Josh Giddey, he can play the 2, he can play the 3. I know he's initially listed as a point guard coming into the league, but at 6'7", he does need to put on a little bit more weight. And 22 years old, Dyson Daniels is somebody that I could see, especially if Josh Giddey maybe playing a little part into that, is recruiting, possibly that. But then my number one target, if the Chicago Bulls do lose out on Coby White, is Benedict Mathurin. And I think Ben Mathurin, we already know the Pacers just let one of the best players in their franchise that they drafted recently in their franchise's history in Miles Turner. Yeah, Miles Turner had some problems in the finals. I think if the Tyrese Halliburton injury didn't happen, I think he would be back there. But regardless of that, we know that was partially due to them and their avoidance of the luxury tax. The Indiana Pacers are much like the Bulls. They don't like to pay the luxury tax. And so because of that, they are a team, and I think this is going to kind of be a new kind of ploy by teams, is that they're going to see the resolve of a team. With so many teams wanting to avoid the luxury tax right now, they're going to test the resolve of teams by offering contracts that could send them into that. Now, the Pacers right now are slated to have $24 million beneath the luxury tax next year. $24 million, which that could very well be the contract for Ben Mathurin, or he could, if he has a big season this year, he could be looking for more. But I think when you look at Tyrese Halliburton coming back, they're eventually going to have to get another center. I mean, they're going to have to get that eventually. They don't have that on the roster as it stands right now, a center that can get them right back at being one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. And I think that they could be looking for that between now and then. And if they get that player, that could leave a player like Ben Mathurin on the outside looking in, not necessarily saying that they won't try to re-sign him, but in restricted free agency, they may try to play a little bit more hardball with him. And a team like the Bulls, who have the cap flexibility, could come in there and try to offer him a deal. I love Ben Mathurin as a player. He's been one of those players that I've talked a lot about basically since he came in the league. He has the right mindset. He has a very similar mindset to Modest Buzelis in the sense that he doesn't care. Like he's passionate about it. 23 years old, 6'5", 210. And Ben Mathurin could be slated for a big year this year because, with Rick Carlisle already saying he is going to be the starting shooting guard this year, they're going to need some scoring output with Tyrese Halliburton being down. Ben Mathurin is in a position to really push his value up, and I think that he's a player that the Bulls should be watching and monitoring over the course of the season. Then 2 long shot candidates for the Chicago Bulls in restricted free agency I have as well. 1, backup plan to Mark Williams. Similar thought process, though, but I think that I'd be more comfortable if the Bulls did sign this guy and did not draft a center. I'd be cool with it. Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren is another player, again, with that Pistons team that's going to be a restricted free agent. And the thing with Jalen Duren, double-double last year, 11 points, 10 rebounds. He averaged over a block per game for the first time in his NBA career as well. He started every game basically since he's come into the league over the last 2 years. He started 169 games out of 206 in his three-year NBA career. And this is a guy that I think when you look at defensive bigs has a lot there. And this is why I do think that the Pistons are going to be in a situation in restricted free agency where they have to decide between Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey unless they're willing to hold on to everybody to go into that luxury tax. A big part of this as well is going to be Ron Holland Jr., how they view him with the Jaden Ivey thing specifically and how they may lead. But if Jalen Duren is a restricted free agent and at any point in time the Pistons are blinking or hesitant to go into that luxury tax, now they're an up-and-coming team. I expect the Detroit Pistons to be one of the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference this year. They're good. Cade Cunningham is really good. They are on that precipice of really of it popping off for them. But you look at them. They have tons of cap space as well. $77 million in cap space. But how much are they going to try to reconstruct that roster around Cade Cunningham and him being a star? We shall see. But I do think that Jalen Duren is a player that the Bulls should absolutely look around. But again, long shot. I don't expect them to be able to get him at all, but I would be interested there. And then the last player, Tari Eason. I think especially if you get a player like Tari Eason in restricted free agency, that could be what you feel comfortable with kind of letting the Ayo go, even though I don't want to see Ayo Dosunmu go. Again, you're playing the averages here. And Tari Eason is in an interesting place because we don't really know how the Houston Rockets are going to plan to use him with now the acquisition of Kevin Durant. He's never been a full-time starter for them. He's only started 21 games out of 160 played over his 3 years in the NBA. He did average over 12 points per game last season on a decent 48% shooting from the field. He's growing as a three-point shooter as well. The percentage was down 2% last year, but the attempts were also up, so he's taking more of that. He's basically averaged right under a block per game, over a steal and a half per game for his career as well. He's one of those players we talked about before, the importance of multi-positional defenders with Josh Giddey and Coby White as your backcourt. Tari Eason could do that. He can be one of those guys. And so I'd really be interested in 12 points, 6 rebounds, 48% shooting coming off the bench. I can see where the Bulls, especially with AK, liking to take shots at players that have proven things elsewhere, taking a shot on a player like Tari Eason. But that's my way too early meathead free agent predictions for the summer of 2026. I do think restricted free agency is going to play a huge role into that. But you guys can let me know how you feel on all of that down below. That's the show for today. You guys can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.